Amanda.
And I'm Mel.
And this is the Road Back Home podcast. Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Road Back Home. I am very excited to bring to you the voice of one of my favorite people. Emer Halpenny is a writer. She's a creative. She had her own drama school for years. She is a very funny person and also somebody I just love being around. Emer has a fascinating story as well as being a fascinating person, and a very fun and interesting person to talk to. She has a fascinating story that has led to her telling that story in a TED Talk, on a documentary on our national broadcaster here, Adoption Stories. And she has been she has been telling her stories here and there over the years. And most recently on the Tommy Tiernan show on, again, our national broadcaster, RTE1 television. And Emer's story is about getting pregnant at 19 years of age back in 1980s Ireland and deciding back then at 19 years of age to give her son for adoption. And we talk about that on this week's podcast. And Emer's TED Talk is about how she has drawn strength from that decision all her life, and how there is so much power in decision, even when that decision is hard, And also, what intrigues me about that decision is how she has described it as being a decision that she made from a deep, deep sense of knowing, in spite of every cell in her body not wanting it to be true. And so that's what we talk about. I'm very honored that she came on to have this conversation with us. There's also another part of the story that I'm not going to tell you. I'll let Emer tell you herself. So tune in, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. I will leave all Emer's links in the show notes. Okay, over to Emer. Emer, you're very welcome to the Road Back Home podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here. So excited and honored.
Oh, well, you know that I had to have a conversation with you. You know that I have also often introduced you as one of my favorite people. I fell in love with you the minute
Back at you.
yeah, the minute our eyes set upon each other, I was like, I need to know that girl. Actually, my first impression of you, or I would say contact with you even, was watching your TED Talk.
Okay.
What's that, 2016 you did that, 17?
Either 16 or 17. I get mixed up.
Yes.
I think it was 17.
Yeah. 2017, that's the year I got sober. And of course, your TED Talk, I'm going to talk about it to begin with. I'm going to link it in the show notes for anybody who is listening. I implore you to watch Emer's TED Talk. It's very short, Emer. What is it?
Yeah.
10 minutes?
Actually,
Even?
it's actually only 6 minutes, and it had been 8 minutes.
Yeah.
But because it's about, my adoption story, I literally, as I was backstage, I just made the decision to drop about 2 minutes worth because I knew I was going to be compromised emotionally.
Wow.
So when we rehearsed that, I was on somewhere, and then we did a rehearsal, and it went really, really well. And they changed the order of the talks for the night, and they put me on last. And so I had all that time to think. And I was like, every time I come to this particular thought, this particular part of it, I can't get beyond it, and I forget my words. And so when I was backstage, I just went, I'm just dropping it. I'm dropping that little section. And it was about 2 minutes worth. So yeah, it was really short.
It was really short, but let me tell you the value in that 6 minutes. It is profound. It is. I mean, it shouldn't be a TEDx talk. It should be a TED talk. It is one. Oh, it's up there with some of the most impactful, for me anyway.
Thank you. That's fine compliment that I accept.
Yeah, well, thank you for accepting it. I love that. Like, would you consider that though? Do you understand? Like, do you not do you understand, but like, do you kind of really own the like the greatness of your delivery in that talk? Not even your delivery, but like the whole thing. So let me run through because I feel like now what we're doing
Yeah.
now is almost like Irish dancing on the radio, where people are like, I can't see, like, what are you talking about? Sounds great, but can't see. Um, so let's just kind of backtrack a little bit. You were in that talk, it was about the power of decision, and you opened your talk with the quote from Tony Robbins to say, decision is the ultimate power. So your decision obviously was to give a baby up for adoption. You got pregnant at what? What age were you?
19.
And this was 1997.
Yeah. Yeah, he was
Oh
born in
no, it was
February
1987. 1987 you got
87.
pregnant?
Yes. Yeah, 1987. He was born in February 1988.
Okay. So 19 years of age, got pregnant, no daddy on the scene, right?
Mm. Yeah, he ran.
And
He's paddled.
he's skedaddled. So 19 years of age, pregnant in 1987. To put that into cultural context in Ireland, the Magdalen laundries were still in operation at that time.
Um,
And as we all know, a young woman having a baby out of quote unquote wedlock was a very dangerous position to be in. It was a very vulnerable position to be in. Did any of that kind of like bear on you, do you think?
Yeah, but not in the way that people might think that it did, because we were sort of on a little knife edge at that time because everything was beginning to change. Young people were beginning to kind of disrespect the church enough to say, well, that's not going to affect me. Like it was still, it was for example, we were, instead of not going to mass, we were going down to the church, but hanging around outside the church, you know. So breaking the rules, but carefully. And like when I say that to my daughters now, they go, "What? That's ridiculous." We go, "No, it was groundbreaking. We were breaking rules and paving the way for people to think independently of the church at the time." So a lot of girls were getting pregnant, and a lot of girls were keeping their babies. So that was sort of the environment that I was found myself in. It was
Okay.
not like, oh my God, I'm at my own here. There were girls keeping their babies. It was more how I judged that because of
Okay.
times, I think, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense. I can remember one of the things that went towards my decision was, look at us, we're Aegis, we don't know what we're doing, you know, such as bringing her snotty nosed child down to the pub on a Sunday afternoon, and look at the child's face is filthy, and oh, he's picking up his soother from the dirty, filthy ground, and she's having a pint and desperately trying to hold on to the relationship she has with that child's father. And he doesn't give a shit, about her. And, um, so I was quite judgmental of bad
Mm.
mothers. And I'm, I didn't have a high opinion of myself that I would be able to do any better, So that was one of the factors was, is this the environment? Is this the way I want my child? Uh,
Mm.
be brought into the world by somebody who doesn't know what she's doing.
That's an astonishing amount of awareness for a 19-year-old to have, really. Do you think?
I think something happened with me the moment that I realized that I was pregnant, that hit me like like a switch. And it was just growing up immediately thinking it's not just me anymore. And how
Yeah.
incredibly selfish you can be at that age. You're supposed to be, I suppose, if you're kind of thinking about natural selection and all of those things, if that's a thing anymore. But to go from being it's all about me to it's really all about the baby and
Mm.
uh, and protection and just absolutely putting somebody else in front of you, and that's very easy to do when you are carrying the baby.
Do you know, I'm smiling as you say this because one of the things that you say in the TED talk was that, when you arrived at the decision to give your son up for adoption, that you knew deep down, like you knew in your bones that you were not meant to be his mother. And yet the irony here is that the moment you became pregnant, you became a mother emotionally. Like you instantly stepped into the what's best for him, what's best
Yeah.
here. Like you instantly, and funny, when I actually met you, let's say beyond your story, and I stood in your actual presence and in your energy, that's what I felt. Like I have this, you give off such a maternal vibe to me. You just like it's,
My God, because I often think even with my own two girls, like
yeah,
I've never been, you know, that motherly person. Like, if they come in, they'd say, "Mum, what's for dinner?" I'd laugh in their face because I don't make dinner. Like I'm not a cook. I would usually be work.
yes.
I have a wonderful relationship with my daughters, by the way, but we're friends.
Okay,
Y-
so do you know what's really interesting about this is, and another point, another kind of thing that your talk, causes you to reflect upon is how the decision defines you and yet, doesn't define you another way. Like that, I'll talk to you about that in a minute because like that was so interesting to me. But in terms of what we think motherhood, like the definitions are, such as that, like, oh, the one who cooks, the one
Yeah, yeah,
who does the housework, this kind of like domesticated impression or this domesticated, that's not the archetype. I'm talking archetypally that you
yeah.
are like mother. And of course, Emer, you're a creative.
Mm,
So I'm talking about it like that. That's the vibe I get to. It's almost like, well, this, like, do you know the way as artists we are midwifing something. Like we are caretakers. We are guardians of something. There's
yeah.
something there that
We're
we are
hope.
bringing
And
forth,
yeah,
and we make unconventional decisions because of that, because of this sacred thing that is coming through us that we understand on some level that can't be articulated, that is divine in some way, meant to be here. And we stop ourselves from getting too involved in the process. Like you'd nearly do what's best for the poem or the book in
yeah,
spite of yourself.
yes, yeah.
Does that make, do you know what I mean? So in terms of our
Does.
type mother creator, that's what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I do feel everything you're saying is true, and it's an interesting observation. All of those things, I just never think of
Yeah.
myself in that way, and yet, I suppose with Jeff and myself, my husband and myself, when we're making joint decisions about our family or our daughters, um, and he would be the one like check the temperature or um like that they would automatically have gone to if they couldn't get their earring out or something. Like they didn't come to me, they go to him. um and yet when it come to sort of things like uh you know taking my daughter out of the school because she was being bullied, like that was the decision I was making. It, what are we going to do, wait for her to be broken before we act on this? For an example, and he would say to me in those times, "You're absolutely right. You knew what to do." It was like this instinct that just
Yes.
was the mother instinct. It was that what you're talking about. It was the one where there was no doubt.
Yes.
Suppose that brings you back to that place, that point
Yes.
where I said, I know with all of my being what I'm supposed to do, even though I had made the decision to keep the baby. When it came down to it,
Yes.
when it came down to the crunch moment. Yeah.
Yes. So let's give again some context to the listener. So what happened was you had the baby, and this, like, it chills my bones. You spent 4 days together in the hospital after he was born, and you said 4 beautiful days.
Mm.
And then the services got
And
involved,
in a
and then
room, sorry, Amanda, but in a
yeah,
room, so, we're very lucky there. Like, parents had, we had private health insurance, and I was able to be in a private room. So that was
Yeah.
very, very intimate. Yeah.
Yes. And 4 days, and then, and then the foster family got involved and gave you what was supposed to be 6, but turned out to be an 8 week um space for you to decide. And you said you were out there walking around waiting for divine intervention, waiting to be told what to do. Now, and it never came, you said. Like that intervention never came, but
Yeah.
you
Waiting for that inner
and
voice for God to kind of, yeah,
yeah.
to kind of know
And
without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah.
yeah, like waiting for some kind of a neon sign as we do.
Yeah.
We're just like, this is such a huge decision. I cannot possibly make it. Please, like, let an anvil fall on my head with a little message attached to it that says, do this, Emer,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Because the weight of that decision is too much for me. And you decided in those 8 weeks that you were going to keep your baby.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I kind of weighed up everything based on, what I felt I could do. Um, the support I felt. I just, I can't remember. Like, I mean, sometimes it's so long ago now. I think, God, the
Yeah.
the reason they'd given you then would be different to the reasons I give you now, and they would have
Yeah.
changed. But I just, yeah, I had made the decision that I would do it, and at that point, then allowed myself to, buy baby clothes and
Yeah.
manuals on how to do this mothering thing,
Yeah.
um, and then went to visit him. I used to visit him, a couple of times a week in the foster family home, which was a beautiful environment, gorgeous family, and I went the last time then to visit him, and picked him up, and I knew, sorry, the last time to visit him before officially he would come back to me, um, before we kind of went and did all the paperwork, and then I would take him home. My last visit to the house, and I picked him up, and that was when that big voice in the head, basically, it was as if somebody, some ultimate, all-knowing, like my higher being, my, God, whatever, was just standing with me, very gently saying, "What do you think you're doing? This is not for you. Put that baby down."
Wow.
And it was like that. It wasn't like, anything. It was as gentle as that, but it was like, like trying to defy gravity or something.
It's incredible. It just like that moment of, and especially with everything that had come before it, like you made your decision and then you kind of went against it and you knew that because one of the things that you said is like every fiber of your being wanted you to go against that knowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if we say the and especially in the culture and socially, so I'm thinking of the conditioning that would have been kind of like the current, the anti-current. So you have this kind of like the conditioning for so many of us is what vetoes any knowing, even sometimes prior to know, like it will prevent us from knowing. It's like I couldn't possibly be that woman who,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like I had it with my own decision about like just not having children in the end. I took 2 pregnancies and they didn't work out, and then there was all the drama around that. And in the end, I kind of came to a knowing that it wasn't for me. And there was so much conditioning got in the way of me honoring that knowing because it was like, well, that just is going to prove to the world that you're selfish. It's
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
prove to the world that you're not capable. And the other voice then was also like, well, you're not going to be a real woman unless you have a baby. You know that. Like there was so much. And as you said, I had a lot of judgment, my
Yeah.
own judgment. I was confronted with everything I had kind of ingested by osmosis in the culture about what I should be doing at this pivotal time in my life and this pivotal moment that was skewing the decision that needed to be made. And kind of like you, I think that my decision in the end was actually a maternal decision because I was like, you know, it's best if I don't. It's best for any potential baby, that I don't go ahead with this because I think I should. Because what a disaster, what a ridiculous reason to have a child, you
because you
know,
think you
because I think I should,
should. Hmm.
you know? So, or it might be, what if you had have gone against that knowing in your bones because you thought you should? A mother should keep her baby.
No, I know. And it's
That, that's astonishing to me.
yeah,
That
yeah.
strength.
Your observations are very helpful actually. Um, because, I would often say, even uh, my conversation with my son now would be
Oh yes, plot twist.
like
Let's
jump ahead.
spoiler alert. Yes, audience brace yourself. Go for it.
Um, you know, we we have discussed this obviously, and I've said,
Because he
um,
found you. We forgot we need to fill in that little bit first.
yeah, let's do that. Okay. Yeah. But I
We'll get
and then
what?
bring back to that point. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so the amazing part of this story, not just the amazing part of this story, but your son came and found you, what, 36 years later?
Yeah. Nearly 36 years later.
Just like two
Uh,
years ago?
um yeah, it was the second last day of November 2023.
Yeah.
And I had completely, I would say that I would 99.999% had given up hope that he would ever find me, that he would ever look for me. And that's a survival thing. That was, I won't say I gave up hope, but I had stopped entertaining the fantasy that he might
You
come.
let go.
I
You let
let go
go.
of it. Like, then you can't do that, because if you keep doing this, and what's lovely is, even telling him some of those fantasies, saying, oh, in the early days when I
Mm.
was involved in the theatre, I used to think, oh, he's going to walk in and audition, and I'll know it's him, and he'll have known it was me. And so that when I say fantasy, they're the sort of things, like I kind of would imagine different ways that it might happen. And then eventually I just went, stop doing your own head and humor. So, I kind of wouldn't allow myself to go there. Another thing that you block off. Yeah.
Yeah. So you and him have spoken about before I interrupted you there with you were saying you've spoken about this kind of like what I was saying
The
about the
the decision.
conditioning. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because as we were just saying, like the title of my talk was The Power of Decision. And you found that yourself. There is strength, there is comfort in coming to actually make a decision.
100%.
And when people say, and including him, like, we certainly batted around, God, I wonder what if you had, kept me. I wonder, how your life would have turned out and all of those things. Um, and I can't, I've tried going there and I can't, you know,
Yeah.
um, because if I look back, I say, yeah, I could have done it. I could have done it. I would have managed. Um, but everything else would be so very different. And I can't erase or even think about erasing what happened post that. Um, but in any case, it doesn't matter, because that voice came and there was no two ways about it. So no matter how many times I kind of run that by in my head, I used to think that there wasn't a guilt there. And that's why I would always still make the same decision if I went back in time. But I think it's not so much that there wasn't a guilt there, it's that there was no doubt, even
Mm.
though I still don't know where I got the strength. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
Every time I go back memory, I stand behind myself and I give myself strength. I put my hand on younger me's shoulder. So there's those layers, I suppose. Yeah.
Yes. I I'm just absorbing this, I'm in some ways speechless because I'm kind of not that I'm trying to inhabit the moment, but I'm just kind of like I'm in awe about it. And because decision, as you say there, when there is doubt, um, I call it the hokey pokey. You've one foot in, one foot out. It's so agonizing.
Oh.
It's so agonizing to be indecisive. And go on.
No, it's when you say that, you're absolutely true. And it's interesting is that everything else in my life, I make decisions like that. I don't agonize over decisions. I never have. I wonder if it's since that moment. I've just about it's just landed for me.
Interesting.
Yeah. You give me any kind of a decision and I'd call it have it worked out in uh, 30 seconds. Less. I go, that's what I'm doing, and I'll do it. Well, I won't
Yeah.
always do it because sometimes there's shiny things all over the place. But making the decision
Yeah.
comes very, uh, you know,
Mhm.
very.
I'm particularly interested in this, being an Enneagram 4 with a tendency to make everything about me.
Mhm. Well, we
Um,
have to do that because we're storytellers, so it has to weave from somewhere, doesn't it?
well, yes, and also I see this as a way of because somebody might your story is so um like it's not the common story. So people sometimes you hear a story like that and you're like, no, I can't relate at all. But I love to try and bring it back to a way that you can. Like so when I think even about sobriety, um, and the power of decision in that journey, and also the agony of indecision in that
Yeah,
journey that keeps you in essentially the toxic relationship between you and whatever the behavior you're doing is that is hurting you.
yeah,
I know what it's like to make a decision and to be so aligned and congruent and resolved in that decision that you get to have a life beyond it.
yeah,
You
yeah,
don't end up living in that pain or in that place or in that agony. So one of the things as well from your TED talk, you were like, it is on some level, your decision defines you in the way that you've just said in that. And I absolutely love the idea. And I'm going to actually journal about this later and borrow it from you. And thank you for the idea of like going back to a time when you made a decision privately in your own private inner world and it was something that m- that I can revisit and put your hand on the shoulder of that woman and say, this is the making of you. Like this is really hard and yet this is the making of like I support your decision in hindsight. That is so powerful to be able to do that. And for a decision to not define you or to both define you and not define you. So put it this way, defines you in that what you said was anytime you go through anything hard or you feel anxiety coming up or it's like, I don't know how to do this, you remember, well, I did that.
yeah,
Like, base,
yeah,
I can do anything because I did that.
yeah,
Right. So it defines you in terms of your strength. But I love how it doesn't define you in terms of like, there's no emotional tax or hangover being paid. Like you're not beating yourself up about that decision, that you can actually stand by yourself. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there are some decisions in life that I'll take an example of something I decided. Now, I did not decide it from that calm, um, this is what's best in spite of it being what's also hardest right now place. I've made decisions in my life that I do regret and that will define me in ways I don't love
mm,
and that don't support me and that I have to kind of like work on self-forgiveness all the time
mm,
because I
yeah,
made that decision back then that wasn't in anybody's best interest except for my ego or my loneliness or my fear or my shame or whatever it was. I made a decision. I bowed. I was obedient to the voice of fear in that moment. And it defined me in ways I regret.
And yet, everybody is doing the best that they can with what they
Yeah,
have at
yeah,
every moment. And I do
yeah,
believe that. Even, no matter how vehemently you disagree with what people are doing,
yes.
they have to be, don't they, doing the best that they can with what they have, you know. I mean, in terms of what they believe is right.
Mm,
I mean, I often think that moment when I made that decision, that was actually, that landed on me. Like I didn't do the work at that point. When a great knowing lands on you, you're not doing any work. You're not actually going, oh, this, if I do this, and then if I do that. That was what I was doing all along, but that had no bearing at the end of the day. And it was just, and I still don't know. And I've said to my son, again, we discussed this, and I've said, uh, I don't know what it was all about. I don't know what the reason was. That may never become clear to either of us. Was it so that,
mm,
he could be brought up in a particular county? Um, yeah, Kerry is where he was brought up, and then he moved to Toronto and he met his wife. And, would the, so who knows
mm,
where, would that have
mm-hmm.
happened if, would he have been happier in Dublin? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
And even
yeah,
for me, I don't know. We might
yeah.
never know. It
No, and
might
we
have,
won't. Sliding doors, my dad used to say, and it's, in some ways we say, thank God, dad expired when he did, because his entire routine is so non-PC right now. But one of the things he used to say was like the futility of if only, he
yeah.
said it's just the futility of it, because if only me auntie had balls, she'd be me uncle. That's what he used to say. Like, it's
Yeah.
kind of like it it
It sounds,
doesn't.
yeah, it's sort of different to what if, isn't it? It,
Or
in,
this, it's kind of the same thing. It's entertaining a reality that isn't here.
but, if only is sort of looking backwards, which is never going to work for anything
Yes.
because it's past and no longer exists. But what if is forward looking, you know,
Okay. Right.
maybe.
Yeah.
Um, no,
But
I
this
I think,
idea of the knowing landing on you when you were not agonizing about it is, yeah, there is something about that, because when when I'm coaching clients sometimes, and I might ask them something, and I'm asking them, it's less a question and more of an invitation. And of course, just by the way that we are schooled, we learn that questions are kind of like a form of demand, for an answer. And
mm,
we don't really understand how to sit with a question until, we're kind of like taught to, or else we go into meditation and pursue it ourselves. But I might invite them to consider something. And what I will see 9 times out of 10 is that person going up into their head for the answer
mm,
instantly.
yeah,
Mental gymnastics, arithmetic. And you're engaging in a mind that is, for all the world, a computer, and it's running codes. And it's like, what do I know about X, Y, and Z? And a lot of that information is not even, it's either not relevant anymore, it's not accurate, it's limited in the sense that you don't actually have access to all the perspectives or information that's needed. So you're going up into a mind that is now, it's like reasoning. It's trying to reason,
yeah,
trying to be like, because um but anyway, it's very busy work. As you say, you didn't do the work. So you go up into your mind and you end up in there. But sometimes not sometimes, then when I see them going into their mind, I'll be like, stop, come down into your body. And I have these two sheets, right? One of them is needs and one of them is feelings. And I'll get them to run their finger down the sheet. Take out the sheet and run your finger down the sheet. And your body will tell you, like, it's a much more embodied experience, knowing is.
yeah,
you know and
yeah,
and very
right.
often there is no language behind the knowing. There's no
Mm,
rationale behind it. It just is.
yeah, yeah.
I find this all very fascinating. Um,
It's a hard question to answer when people say why. You know, it's one of the first things people ask is why. Why did you make that decision? And you know, as I've written before, they shouldn't be saying why. They should be saying how, and not how could you, but how did you? And I still don't have an answer for that. You
oh,
know,
I love that. Is that going to be your book?
it's in the book. It's
Is
in the book.
but okay, because that could be a whole thing. Sometimes I
That could be a
shake
whole
my
other book. Yeah.
exactly. I shake my fist at the sky sometimes with Mel Robbins' books. You know, the let them theory, the 5 second rule, high five habit, and I'm like, oh God, um, you know, you could have that. It's like I can just see it. Like I hope she's not listening because she'll probably fucking rob it.
Yeah.
You know, be like it's not
I'm afraid.
why. Ask
Yeah.
ask not why. Ask how.
Yeah.
Anyway, so um. let's get back to, or let's get to the part where, so you know, you've lived your life, you married Jeff, you've had a drama school, you have your whole creative career, you have this beautiful life, your two daughters, um, and you let go of all of the speculating and fantasizing about your son walking into your life, and then one normal, ordinary day towards the end of November 2023, what happens?
Like I was sitting in work. I was working as a ward clerk at the time. So on ward in the kitchen, on my break, flicking through Instagram, scrolling, and then going, oh, there's somebody's messaging me. Oh yeah, somebody tried to message me on it came up on my radar. Somebody was trying to message me. I didn't see a name I recognized. I just went, oh, that's whatever. And I think that comes from having been self-employed for so long. You know, I'm probably like people thinking I'm doing this or I'm doing that, and they're you know asking questions about usually will you uh, do something for me or whatever. You know, I just was kind of I gotten to the point I was ignoring them, and I went, oh, this and again. And eh, his handle at the time, because what he does is he's a personal coach, a body coach, and his wife is the sort of the face of the business. So she has all her side and he's supporting that, but he's also a personal coach. And his thing was like for dads, you know, make sure you don't end up with a dad bod or whatever. And that was it. So it was actually called Pumped Up Dad was what his app was at the time. It's now it's the ADHD grind, I think. But so I was like, oh, pumped done, and I was going, what's this?
Pop up dad wants to connect. You're like, no thanks.
Well, I sort of didn't even take it in because, like I say, when you're you know self-employed and you're creative, like you can get all sorts of names, like meaning anything. So I wasn't kind of suspicious, but I just went, what? And then you know straight into it, like the message was um, telling me who he was and, you know, and that he understood why I had done what I had done and that he understood that I did it out of love for him and he'd had a great life and thank you. And, you know, I saw your TED talk and, you know, uh, he said then a couple of other things that he could only have known if he had, you know, received official, like an official letter from me, which I made sure was on file for him. Um, and my first thought was, why would somebody do something so cruel to me
Mm,
and pretend to be my son to mess with my head? Why would somebody be so fucked up in the head that they would actually think to do this to punish me for having given a child up for adoption? Your mind goes to those places. And then I was also thinking, this all happened over split seconds. And then I was thinking, how did he get his hands on that information? Because
mm,
that's so. I didn't kind of immediately believe it. But I was heading into shock. I went onto his page. I saw his face, which is my face. in that I recognized myself.
Oh my
Um,
God.
and I had been texting Jeff. I sent him a screenshot of the message. And I was like, why would anybody do this? And he just went, oh, he's at home. I'm in work. He's like texting back, look, seek professional advice. And then I went on and I saw the thing and I did a screenshot of the photo, sent it to Jeff, and I just said, fuck, it's him. And then I went into shock, full blown. Just, it was like diving into the sea and going to the bottom of the sea, forgetting to breathe. I mean, I describe it in my book, but basically, there was a moment when I was 9 and I was knocked down in Spain. And I went had this out of body experience when I was kind of being hurled in the air, where there was no time and there was no personalities and there was nothing. There was nothing except a kind of a knowing that, you know, God, I can't explain it in this time that we have now, but it was a very surreal feeling. But all through that time that I was in this sort of timeless hurtling through the air, there was my mother screaming because she was, you know, I had to run ahead. And so she was there in reality and she was screaming. And for me, there was just this thing. So I was kind of going, she loves me so much. Um, and when when I went into shock, when I saw this message from Brian, that's what happened. I went hurtling in the air again. It was the same feeling. It was like I kind of went out of my body and there was no time, there was no reality. Everything was everything. And I was like,
Mm.
where's Anna, my mother screaming? And then I realized that I'm the mother now. And the scream never made it to my lips. That sound has been in my head for nearly 36 years. And I was able to release it. And that's what that was the shock. Mm. Incredibly profound. It was, oh, just. So then you try and deal with being in that state of shock. So, you know, I came out onto the ward and I could see the looks on the faces of the nurses. You know, they roll around these cows like computer on wheels, and it's almost a choreography when you see them coming in and out. But they were all kind of going past, and they were all looking, and they all had the same expression on their face. And I was like, I know I have to get out of here. Um, and you know, the short version of that story is that Jeff was driving around looking for me, and I couldn't speak. I was on the phone to him and I couldn't speak, and so he just told me where to go, picked me up, came home. As it happened, my 2 daughters were here. They weren't in work. They just for different sets of reasons. And it was just the 4 of us. And it was incredible because obviously they've always known about, well, not obviously, but in my case, because I'm very open about it, they've always known they had a brother. And all I could think was, I need to get back to him. I need to let him know that I've seen the message. Well, he would have known. But I hadn't answered it. And so, but I was in shock, so I couldn't do anything. So they took my phone and they began to text him. And we were all wording the texts, but, you know, Kira had taken first and then, you know, and Kira kind of went off to have a shower and then Ash took over. And so he was, you know, he said, I can't believe I'm talking to my sisters. And, you know, it was just a beautiful interaction. And I'm so happy that that's how it happened first, that they spoke first, because, you know, I've always had 3 children, but I've only ever had 2 of them with me. And there's
Mm.
such mixed up feelings in that, you know? I think things that
Mm.
people can't even imagine, like, you know, over the years, people saying, oh, how many children do you have? And I don't want to deny him, but I don't want to open this can of worms in just a sort of a small talk conversation. So I'd say, I have 2 girls, which is the truth. But you
Mm.
place how many times people say, oh, and no boys. And I'm like, no, am I going to go? Yeah, sorry, I forgot. Yeah, I do actually. I don't know why
Yeah.
people would, but they would. And I just say, just the two girls. So, being with a consultant for something recently, and he asked me how many children I have, and I was able to say three. And nothing
Yeah.
happened, He didn't say,
Yes.
where are they all? And, you know,
Oh my God, Emer.
yeah, yeah. Took a while to come down from that one. Took a while. Yeah.
Just so your son's name is Brian.
Yeah. That's not what I called him. I called him Andrew.
Okay.
Andrew, after my two grandfathers. And he actually used his name when he signed off with that first message, Brian, and he put in brackets Andrew, because he knew. He got when he decided to get the information, go to Adoption Ireland and get his information that he was entitled to. He said there was, I think it was like a 56-page document. Everything was in it. Like I need to get back to him about that because I'm going like, what? He said, conversations recorded every time you
Wow.
phoned. Like I'd phone every few years and say, I wonder how he's doing, you know, um, everything. Yeah. So then he
Mm.
Googled me and they found the TEDx talk and they were himself and his wife and they were going, is it her? Is it her? And then when I said what I said about, having getting a baby up for adoption, he said their mouths just fell. It must have been so surreal for him to watch that. And
Yes.
in that
Can you imagine?
moment, realize that everything he had told himself about his birth mother was not true. The story he had told himself over the years, you know,
Yes.
he was like,
Yes.
was she, was she this? Was she that? Was she a drug addict? Was it this? He
Yeah.
had built a picture of what I must be like and convinced himself of it, as we do. I had built up a picture of what he was like. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was not, the
Yeah.
magnificent being that he is now either. I
Yeah.
just couldn't picture.
It's amazing even to think about that in terms of, like as he is racking his brain saying, like, what would possibly, it's almost like it's that question, what would possibly convince or persuade or a mother to give up her son? And the mind is instantly, well, she must have been a drug addict. She must have been. The mind is pulling from all these disaster stories, and all of these narratives that, and never once is it like, well, because she loves you.
Yeah, yeah. Because he grew up and he said he was happy, which is what I wanted. So he wouldn't kind of go into it in any great depth over his childhood or growing up. But he would kind of just say, she mustn't have loved me.
Yes.
And then to find out, and then of course, there's not just the TED talk, there was like so much out there that I was talking about him all of the time and what Jeff called me leaving a trail of breadcrumbs, which I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely love that. I was hoping that he'd see those things. He'd turn on,
Yes.
hear an interview or something. I was hoping for that. Sure. I
Yes.
don't know
You
exactly why I was doing it, but I was hoping.
you were, essentially you were. Oh, I can't say you were, but I know that you were on adoption stories, and then you had your TED talk, and there was information in the public domain, and also you, not just information, you put yourself in the public domain with your story, and again, it's more of tying into that idea of oh gosh, how do I even put this? Like you didn't just make that decision and then slam the door shut on it and never speak tell of it again. Like you held space. How did you do that? You held space that whole time for something that had to have been enormously painful and heavy for you to bear. And yet you allowed it to exist in the open alongside your
And
beautiful life, your beautiful, happy life. Like, what have you got to say about that even? Like, what, how would
it,
you?
it fine to do that. And essentially it was, I mean, yeah, you go out and you try and get on with your life, and it's like any grief. You were trying to get on with your life, and you're going, how is it that everybody's carrying on as if the world hasn't just ended? For
Yes.
me, um, and so also the advice at the time that I was given was, look, don't, we kind of kept the pregnancy a secret um, until we knew what we were doing. And then, I was kind of advised, look, it's probably easier to keep it a secret because, it's going to be very hard for you to talk about it. So, just don't bring it up. And that was done with the best of intentions, but it didn't work for me because that's not who I am. So I would tell people my secret. That's how it started. Was I was, I was saying, look, don't say this to anybody, but this is my story. And sometimes that happened when I was like really drunk, and I would be telling people, and I don't know, I sort of copped on that I would want to stop doing that when I'm drunk because people would ask me the same questions. It was always like, what did it feel like?
Hmm.
Which is a dreadful question when you think about it, because it's like what my father calls, journalism, where they're saying, what did it feel like when the knife went in? And
Hmm.
I would try to answer them. And then I'd end up not just drunk, but drunk and crying and in a mess. It was very messy. Um, so although I kind of continued to tell people, I I kind of gradually took it out from under the carpet, my story, and I decided, not all at once, but gradually, that it wouldn't be a secret anymore. And um, there was one occasion when Jeff and myself were being interviewed by the journalist Andrea Smith from the Sunday Indo, who's such a beautiful person, and she was doing this cover on, it's people's relationships, to each other. So
Oh,
Jeff,
I did that. Me and Terry did that too.
I know you did, yeah. Was it Andrea that did it with you?
She did.
Yeah, she's wonderful. So she was so giving of her time, but during that interview with us both, um, she, it, it came up, and she said, "Well, look, I won't say anything about that. I won't include that in the interview." And I said, "Do you know what? uh, I want you to." And she was very, very careful about that. And she, made sure that I was in my own right head about making that. And I said, no, no, no. And again, back to decisions, I decided there and then, no, I want this out there. So we covered that in the interview. So a lot of people were then able to say, I saw the interview and I didn't know about that. And I'd say, yeah. And it was a much easier way to talk about him without people going straight in.
Mm.
They're respectful. They'd say, I didn't know about the adoption story. And I'd say, oh, yeah. And they kind of go, what? And I'd say, oh, it's for another time, whatever, So I was able to move on with it. And then that was so helpful. And people were so fascinated by it. And then people who also had a story were very um, thankful for the voice being given to their adoption story, I think. So that's sort of how it started. Yeah, from there. And it was just, was my, definitely my therapy, talking about it.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things um, that I mean, my Substack is called "Your Happiness is a Gift," and it's kind of a message or a premise that when you take ownership of your life, your stories, your wounds, your grief, your healing, your addiction, whatever it is, when you take ownership of that and you begin to, um, you know, integrate it into your life and essentially do the work around it. But when I say do the work, it's almost like a living amends. Like when you own it, you bring it into your life, you unshame it,
Yes, that's
and
huge. That's
Huge.
huge. You unshame it. That's a brilliant. Listen, get that into a book before Mel steals that one as well.
Mel, if you're listening,
Yeah.
fuck off.
Same with Amanda's. Okay.
Uh, um, actually, I can't claim that. There's a whole body of work being done by David Bedrick about unshaming, but and many others. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I've been swimming in the waters of unshaming now for probably a decade as I heal, something in my own self. But yeah, so when you take ownership of your life, your story, your decisions, your addiction, whatever it is, and you unshame that, and then you alchemize it or leverage it. Like, I mean, this is being the creative. We take something shitty and we turn it into gold. We turn it into beauty. We turn it into balm. We put it back out into the universe in a way that it will cause good, that it will.
That is beautiful.
And it's true though, isn't it?
It is. It is. Like, I mean, my version of what you're talking about is this is my story. I earned it. I earned it. It's mine. I'm gonna get, and I can do what I want with my story, and I can tell it in whatever way I want. But for you to say alchemize it, it's like a balm, and we're reshaping it, to put it out into the world because even the parts of my story in my book where I talk about pain and being so terrified of the pain and building like hiding the pain away in brambles and briars and kind of keeping a lid on it and it became the idea of the pain became scarier than the pain because when I finally confronted it, and I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why, it's the work that you do in the telling of the story and in looking at yourself, um, it was very gentle.
Mm-hmm. I have a post that I only just wrote yesterday, and it goes along with last week's episode. I was sharing about, my journey. I was messily. It was a very messy share because it's still, it's an ongoing thing that hasn't fully, like it hasn't come full circle for me. So I'm still in the trenches sharing about my journey with this particular aspect of my life and specifically around recovery. And it's the post is called "Bowing to Change." And it's about surrender. And the question is, at last, because I every time I think I've surrendered, I figure out that I actually haven't surrendered. And but one of the things that I was saying was like I had, by the way, did I tell you I adopted a dog?
No, tell
Okay.
me.
Molly.
T- Tell me. That's something I would have.
Yes, it's something I should
Uh,
have told you. But there she is.
oh my God.
There's
What?
Molly.
She'd been there the whole time.
She's been there the whole time having a little
Oh,
nap.
Molly, you're so good. You're
She
such a
is
good girl.
she's an absolute saint. She's
What
an
age is she?
angel dream dog. She's 2. She's a
Oh,
Cavachon. I'll flood you with photographs now after this.
super.
But so
Adore her.
I had a moment last week. So Molly is adopted. I have her maybe 6 weeks or so, and I caught myself in a very ordinary moment of literally just preparing her meal, and I realized I was weighing her food, and I realized I'm doing this because I love her.
Mm.
And I have been at odds with the advice, not advice, but the support and help that I've been given. Like, it's like, Amanda, like really, like have a food plan, like really engage with this. Part of my recovery from disordered eating is to really allow myself to have plans and like have a plan and forethought. But I've been kicking against it because it's the same, like having a food plan is just it when I was entrenched in diet culture, it was a so how I put it in the post was it used to be a burden of shame.
Yeah.
It was something I did because I was a problem child, or my body was a problem to be solved. And so I have been resisting the medicine this whole time because used to be a burden of shame. And I realized as I was feeding Molly last week that actually it's an offering of love.
It's beautiful. It's just a label and it's like what you say, would you, what, how would you speak to your inner child? Would you, would you speak to your inner child as a child that way? No, you wouldn't. You'd speak, but, and that's really what Molly was showing you,
And it was
which
an
is beautiful.
ordinary moment, as you said. I wasn't up in my head having an argument. I wasn't engaging with the dilemma at all. I was literally just feeding my dog. And not even just, it expands beyond feeding. Like, because she is a rescue dog, I've never had a rescue dog before. So my attention to detail, my concern, all of the things, all of the ways that I am showing up for her now so that she can thrive. I'm paying attention to a lot of things in her. And I realized that I am doing all of this so she can thrive.
Yeah,
And this is the exact same, like they are all the same behaviors, the same medicine that I am resisting because it was originally offered in the story. The story was, this is a shameful thing you are and must be made,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, made right. And so when we own our stories and own our wounds and all of that thing, and all of the years of therapy and coaching and everything like that, of course, benefit me. But I'm standing literally feeding my dog when the knowing lands,
When it lands,
when the
and
truth lands, when the reframe lands, and I get to experience this as something completely different,
yeah,
you know? And
beautiful.
one of the things that we learn, whether you're going through therapy or, as a therapist, when you're working with clients, is that, circumstances ultimately are neutral.
Mm,
It is the stories we wrap around the
yeah,
circumstances that define our relationship with ourselves in the context of those circumstances.
yeah,
And
and the
so, yeah. And so, like a circumstance such as giving your baby up for adoption is a neutral thing, let's say, in terms of it being circumstantial, but the story that gets attached to it can define your trajectory forward. And your, process with this, allowing it to have been a moment of strength that fortifies you through life, and then that you allow, and that you also took ownership of how you were going to offer this information, like allow people to know this about you. You also took control of that, you
yeah,
know? And I'm sure as well, it's like almost like for the record,
yeah,
the breadcrumbs piece, all of everything that you put, all the ownership that you took brought your heart back home to itself, like brought
and
Brian back into your life.
I believe it was because you know, I definitely believe that I moved stagnant energy, you know,
Yeah.
put it away. You say, that's it now, going to put that there. I'll take it out on his birthday and I'll give it a good polish and I'll put it back away again. And that, that's something that's just stagnating. And then all of that, I suppose, you know, the work that I did around COVID and lockdown, and which became a book, which was like going into those thoughts and facing fear and facing the pain and all of those things, moved the energy because, you know, 36
Mm.
years, and then I write this book, and then he comes into my life, and I have to change the end of the book. You know,
Yeah. Unbelievable.
it's yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So decision is the ultimate power, you know?
It
Uh,
it frees
pardon?
you. It really it frees you.
Yeah. Mm, yeah. It frees you when it is the kind of decision that is that embodied knowing, that you don't go back on, the kind of decision that like you can't unring that bell. Um, and also you can't force, I don't think you can force it either. Now, in situations that there is an urgent need for a decision, that might be a little bit different. But in terms of like a sobriety journey, you can be a long time in what I call step zero, which is like the pre-decision.
Yeah.
The time
Yeah.
prior to the decision is agonizing and it's very hard to be in. And it is a process. And we can absolutely do things that can assist that process. One of the things, and assist other people's process. Like I know that the benefit that I'm going to have from just being a witness to your journey and also having the privilege of a front row seat and that I get to engage with you about it and ask you questions about it and get in there a little bit with my little, I don't want to say magnifying glass because I hope I don't feel like I'm scrutinizing you, but my curiosity. I'm rooting
Yeah.
around in your story with my curiosity, going, tell me about this.
And it's not, Amanda, what you're doing is you were framing questions in it's such an interesting way. And it's not like, oh, what did that feel like when the knife went in? It's none of that. So I don't feel that at all. I appreciate and um reveling in your curiosity. It's
Yeah.
lovely. And that's the whole thing about this story now that
Yes.
has become a happy story and it's bringing great joy, you know?
Yes, I imagine, and hope and inspiration. And so yourself and Brian are you are telling your story together. You went on the Tommy Tiernan show. For anybody listening who is not Irish, the Tommy Tiernan show is a would we call it? It's a talk show, but not of the entertainment variety. Like people aren't on there promoting movies or anything like that. It is a here's a
Week.
human with a story I know nothing about. Let me ask them. Let me get them to tell it to me.
Yeah.
Would you
Because he does,
agree?
Tommy Tiernan who's a stand-up comedian as well and an actor. But
Yeah.
in this, he takes um, people's stories and he, like that, in the same way, he gets stuck in there and he's curious about it. He doesn't know who's coming on beforehand, so it's all happening in the moment. He's like, his authenticity is would knock you over because
Yeah.
he's just asking what he's asking, what
Yes.
occurred.
And I do like the fact that he's like he doesn't hide his fascination. I think, I when people ask questions without curiosity or fascination, it's just information mining.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and in a way I'm like, fuck off. Like they're just looking for information for me for a purpose that really has nothing to do with
Just whatever.
they're
There
just
was
doing
a
their
really funny
job.
moment. Yeah, there was a funny moment because the interview itself took well over an hour, but what's edited, the edited version is 20 minutes. There was a point where Brian tells him about his half brother, who is 5 months older than him. So the gentleman that got me in the family way, who then went on and gotten another girl in the family way 5 months earlier. So, and then they met. I set it up so that they met each other. The two lads.
Yeah.
And it was lovely. But because when Brian was over, he had been with me on the Friday night, stayed the night actually, which was lovely. Saturday morning, dropped him back. He was meeting Peter, his brother, who I still had to meet, hadn't met him at that point, but had spoken to him on the phone. Um, and then we came together and we were on the Sunday, we were recording the show. So Brian's kind of saying, oh, I forgot to tell you this, in the show, like he's actually saying things. But he explained to Tommy, he went, oh, yeah, so like that. He said 5 months before, he got Eva pregnant, he got me pregnant. And Tommy, he's so engrossed in the story, but he was just like, and he just looked at me and he was like, and he did that for such a long time that I ended up kind of going, what you gonna do? You know? And it doesn't cut that way. He just kind of looks to me and, um, so yeah, it was an incredible experience.
What do you think was going through his mind in that moment?
He asked none of the questions that people normally ask. I don't know what was going through his mind was, I suppose, you've got this one lad who's, putting it about a bit, And the girls and the circumstances, because the other girl, like she kept her baby, and there was that's a whole. They had their story, and I did meet him that night. Like I had everybody arranged for when we came from the studio. I had the foster parent that Brian had never met because they fell in love with him. They had him for like about 4 months.
Oh my
Uh,
God, Emer.
yeah. And then Peter was there, and his uh, wife couldn't make it, but she was supposed to come. And all of my family, and so it was just it was credible. Yeah, meeting for a drink afterwards. It was lovely. Really, really nice. This has become. It could have gone anyway, but it has turned into a most
Yeah,
beautiful. If I was to take a pen and write a script about how I'd wanted to be happily ever after, I couldn't do better. Um,
yes.
and it's been so very normal as well as surreal, you know.
So, Emer, what's your mission now?
Mm. I- As always, and you know me, Amanda, I have a few. There's a few in the back boiler. So, um, ultimately, I mean, just as an aside, Brian and myself are launching a podcast this summer,
Yeah,
which we both feel we have a moral obligation to do
yeah.
because we have had such a overwhelming amount of contact from people in the adoption community who just, you know, uh, really appreciate our story and
Hmm.
our openness in telling it. And we're both, he's very similar to me, so we've no
Hmm.
problem doing that and feel we should. But that's one thing. But I do feel that, um, when you kind of try to look for your life's purpose, and it's like what we've been talking about all the time. It's like, what is it? What am I supposed to do? Reading through what color is my parachute, and
Yeah.
or figuring out all these things, and then I go and I get a job with a salary, and I go, oh, and that lasted a couple of years, and I kind of spectacularly came back to where I am at the moment, which is just focusing on my creative projects. Um, and I know, and I suddenly know what I want to do. And it's like, I ultimately want to inspire people to find their thing, which is, exactly what you do. And it's really important work, but doing it through what I know, which is drama. And I was showing an idea to Jeff yesterday. One of my greatest joys is writing. Uh, And if I was to choose a genre that I could just be left alone to do, it would be writing plays and writing them for teenagers. Oh, that is just gives me so much joy. And I'm talking funny, silly plays. And I kind of came up with an idea in or around some of the scripts that I had written with the youth theatre a couple of years ago. And I was saying to Jeff, this is my idea. This is what I think I'm going to do a podcast, which is going to be around this. And he said, you're basically bringing your youth theatre online, which I think is what I am. So my work I've always felt for the person on the cusp of adulthood,
Hmm.
who's beginning to know themselves and is feeling there is more to me than anybody else can see. I'm not being seen. You know that I've always had an issue with this as well. But I think that's
Same.
right at that age. So if I can get in as I used to do in my youth theatre, see things land on a 15-year-old's face, to
Hmm.
see it land on her face, and for her to know, oh, I get it, I know what I have, I did that, that came from my brain. That's so
Yeah.
powerful, and that's work I suppose I'm not finished doing it.
Mm.
And then there's
Yeah.
the book, which has to be published, but I think all of it comes back to that one thing: help people to help themselves,
Mm.
bring make people laugh.
Yeah. And it's also about maybe about that defining thing. Like, what is that defining thing about you that is like your superpower. It's how you ended your TED talk. It's like decision is the ultimate power, and it's my superpower. Like, what is the superpower? Like that isn't going to be picked up in school.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
my
What are
curiosity in school got me into trouble. My creativity got me into trouble. You know, like my superpowers were just like an inconvenience. You know,
yeah,
because my superpower wasn't doing homework.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
I met somebody recently. We were 40 years out of school, and my school Muckers has a every year they have a lunch for whoever wants to. You got
mm,
people who are years out, even because we were 40 years out, there was a lot of us there, and I was honored to be asked to be the keynote speaker at it. And just where the story went was bumping into one of the girls a couple of weeks earlier, and if I was always in trouble, she was spectacularly always in trouble. She did it with panache. And anyway, she looked amazing and talking about all that. But our conversation got on to she had discovered only 2 years before that she actually had ADHD. And this is what happened all those years ago. And that's a whole other subject. I understand that. And I pretty sure now that I had ADHD all these years discovered
yeah,
because my son
same.
discovered that he had it, and he discovered it when school were asking him to get his son assessed.
Yes,
And
yeah,
so but what she said was very interesting. She said, Emer, the thing about ADHD is if you can find your passion, it
yes,
becomes your superpower. And for
yes.
her, she never found her passion. And
Mm,
so then she had, like, she's sober now, 2 years with this
mm,
medications, all this.
mm,
She said, no, Emer, like I was in rehab. I was like, it wasn't like I was a heavy drinker. I couldn't find my passion. And that's where it went into all of these making trouble for herself. So
absolutely.
her now being on medication has allowed her to sort everything out, and she's now happy. But what saved me was the life of creativity, the drama.
Hmm.
And what pushed me there was I was this broken little girl who had just given her baby away and had nothing else, and took the first, I suppose, helping hand that came my way, and that was two friends saying, "We joined the local musical society, and that was where it
Yeah.
all, So maybe there was more power in that decision than I even realized. That I'm just beginning to
Mm,
realize.
yeah. As they say in the rooms that I frequent these days, more will be revealed.
Oh, without a
Emer,
doubt.
you're endlessly fascinating to me, and I just am thrilled and like I'm giddy every time that we get together to chat
Oh,
and
same.
yeah,
Absolute.
yeah. I love you loads. I'm going to give you a little I'm going to introduce you to Molly. Um
Oh, please do, yes.
yeah,
Oh, Molly, look at you. Oh, Molly, you're so pretty.
she's
Hello.
gorgeous. She's
She
like,
is gorgeous.
"Excuse me, I was napping." Yeah, so we're going to go out for a little
What?
walkie. What?
What happened to her? Do you know her story? Like,
I
what?
don't really, other than she was surrendered by whatever family had her, and their loss is my gain, I guess, but we are just having the best time. She is a real snuggle bug, and
Oh, she's gorgeous.
I'm delighted with her. So yeah, I'll send you photos.
That's what just lying there all that time.
Yeah, she's so quiet. So thank you so much, Emer, for coming
Thank
on today and sharing your story. And I am so excited to share it with my listeners. I'm sure they will be just like glued, and
Amanda, your questions were so interesting and so like I got stuff even in that interview that just kind of landed for me just now, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Loads of it.
yeah, yeah.
The work is never done,
That's
is it?
that's kind of my superpower as well. Like
Yeah.
allowing my curiosity into your business is sometimes does end up unlocking a few doors for the person whose business it is.
Yeah.
You
That's
know?
yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Wonderful. I feel like I've just had some therapy.
Well, listen, go on and have a lovely day. Do something lovely for yourself now, and I
Thanks.
will hope to see you in the flesh really soon.
Yeah, that would be lovely. Give you a hug. Thanks so
Yes.
much, man.
Thank you, Emer.